right, thank you all for your patience. Let the record reflect we've reconvened with all members present virtually. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I have a motion for the executive minutes of March 22nd, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, welcome all. And again, we apologize for the slight delay. Let me just start off with a couple of things to touch on since the last 2 weeks. We'll talk about our May Day art contest winner in just a second, but I want to start with the retirement of our police chief. So if you happen to be downtown this morning, you might have been surprised to see a different face on Waverly Police Post. Someone showing off many medals, wearing a big smile on his face. It was none other than our Police Chief Gotchison, spending part of his last day on the job right where he started, on the downtown footbeat. Later, many gathered for lunch to recognize his 30 years of service to Madison, including attendants were chiefs and officers from many Morris County communities, Sheriff Gannon, Morris County Sheriff Gannon, Mayor Mariana Holden, and many former Madison police personnel returned to thank their leader for so many years. And certainly so many of our Madison Borough employees were there to support our chief. So we want to thank Chief Darren for his service and dedication to Madison and wish him the best as he moves on to the next phase of his life. And Michael, if we bring up our pictures. As you know, as we're bringing this up, but every year for May Day, we have an art contest. The art is submitted and then judged by members of the DDC and ends up on t-shirt and signs. And you see right there is Kate Saracini, who is this year's winner, a kindergartner. And that was a very big surprise that when we found out that this beautiful drawing was done by a kindergartner at Central Avenue School. And she would be here virtually to accept this recognition, but it's past her bedtime. So we did it on Friday at Central Avenue School. And as you can see in the picture there is from left to right is Central Avenue School art teacher Jordana Lindner, our DDC chair Susie Whitehorn, the principal at Central Avenue Tom Liss, Kate's parents Christine and David, and then Kate standing proudly in the front. And you will see those that great artwork adorned shirts and again signs on May Day. So if you happen to see Kate, please thank her. You can see that she is very proud to be recognized. So thank you, Michael. And now we'll bring in Marlene Dolan. Welcome, Marlene.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you for being able to carve out time to join us. I know you would attend the meetings anyway. And we know this proclamation is an annual event to recognize National Nurses Week, but it is very special this year to do this because what you have done, as I've called you a couple of times, our very own Dr. Fauci, but you have stepped up, and not only you, as will be mentioned here, other nurses here in Madison, but nurses across our country that have really, over the past year, put in endless hours as we fight this pandemic. So Whereas the health and well-being of people are the biggest priorities for our community, and whereas in the Borough of Madison, nurses are an integral part of our healthcare system, serving residents of all ages with skill, knowledge, caring, and commitment. And whereas nurses have a unique perspective and broad understanding of the concepts of good health, and whereas May 6 to 12, 2021 has been designated National Nurses Week to acknowledge and promote the contributions of nurses in our community. And whereas the Borough of Madison Public Health Nurse Supervisor Marlene Boland, BSN, has been dedicated to the well-being of Madison residents since 1994 and is competently assisted by Jean Nash, and in recent weeks and months by Board of Education nurses Colette Krekus, Diane Fastigi, Gary Moran, Mary Jane Surinsky, and Jackie Young. And whereas the commitment and tireless efforts of these nurses as they manage the many health issues associated with COVID-19 pandemic has been exemplary, I, Robert H. Conley, Mayor Borough of Madison, on behalf of the governing body, hereby recognize the week of May 6 to 12, 2021 as National Nurses Week and encourage the citizens of Madison to acknowledge the many services provided by nurses and the tremendous contribution they make to the health of our residents and the well-being of our community. Let me virtually pass this over to you. And if you'd like to say a few words, Marlene, oh, look, there it is.
It worked. It worked
Yes.
again.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks so much. I appreciate the acknowledgement of this week for all professional nurses, not only the ones that you mentioned, Mayor. I have two other nurses that I have worked very closely with over the last 13 months. The first is Renee Riley, who's the school nurse at St. Vincent Martyr School, and Kristen Stanley, who is the nurse at the Kirby Children's Center. And as we've said for the last several months, the partnerships that we've established over the many years has really made a difference this year. These school nurses have no time off. They have no downtime, weekends and spring breaks and everything. So I'm so pleased and lucky to be working with such a group of dedicated professionals. And I thank the council and thank the mayor for this recognition. Thank you.
Thank you, Marlene, for joining us. Please pass our thanks on to all the nurses that you work with.
Will do.
Okay, we will now move on to reports from committees. Public Safety, Council President Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor. From the fire department has shipped surplus gear and equipment to the County Line Volunteer Fire Department located in Sylacauga, Alabama. They lost a lot of their equipment and gear when a tornado hit them a month or so ago. So it was nice that we were able to help them out in their time of need. And the fire department would also like to congratulate Chief Atchison on his retirement and to thank him for all his help and assistance over the years. For the Madison Police Department, the Madison Police Department personnel, along with officers from 5 area police departments and the Morris County Sheriff's Office, attended a presentation by Chief Assistant Prosecutor Brad Seabury of the Morris County Prosecutor's Office regarding the new marijuana decriminalization and cannabis legalization legislation on April 15th. Police personnel also received annual arrest, seizure, and search and seizure training by Madison Joint Municipal Court Municipal Prosecutor Mary Ann McCoy and Med Rodriguez of the Morris County Prosecutor's Office. Madison Police Department personnel participated in the Environmental Commissions of Madison, Chatham Borough, and Chatham Township EV Expo to celebrate Earth Day. We showcased the hybrid patrol car 1706, our electric patrol pedal bicycle, and our electric scooter that police personnel use on our yearly Bottle Hill Day. A group of newly appointed police corporals attended applied leadership risk training on April 21st. Further, 13 police supervisors will be attending risk management training given by New Jersey Municipal Excess Liability. There has been 4 that has attended thus far on April 12th and 19th. And then later on this evening, we'll be announcing an acting police chief and new captain and 2 new police officers being hired. So thank you. That's my report.
Thank you very much. And Finance Borough Clerk, Ms. Bailey.
Thank you, Mayor. I have just a brief report right now, and then I'd like to reserve my comments on the budget for the budget hearing. So from the tax collector's office, the homestead rebate of New Jersey will be applied to May's property taxes for eligible residents. The state's homestead program gives a credit against property taxes for residents making under $150,000 a year if they are age 65 or older or are disabled, or $75,000 a year if they are under 65 years old. The tax collector would like to remind residents that the May property tax bill is due next week. Thank you.
Thank you. And Public Works Engineering, Mr. Hoover.
Thank you, Mayor. From the engineering department, Shafano Construction has indicated the mill and overlay program will begin in Madison later this week. The roads affected will include Woodland between Green and Wanaka, Linden, Independence, Barden, Serpico, and North between East and Burnett. Notices have been posted on the Borough website and social media. The scheduled public bid opening for reconstruction of Anthony Drive and Wayne Boulevard was awarded, and the contractor has discussed mid-May for mobilization to Madison. Madison completed sidewalk topsoil and mulch applications at the new Dodge Playground Restroom building, allowing for safe access by the many users of the playground. Plans are being completed for resurfacing and replacement of playground equipment this year, and grant applications are being prepared for possible state reimbursement funding. For the DPW, they're working with the Shade Tree Management Board on marking out the locations in the borough's right-of-way to plant 120 trees as part of the annual tree replacement program. The electric department has installed the electric service required to operate the newly acquired commercial compactor equipment at the recycling center. DPW will be completing the foundation base for the unit next week, and the equipment will then be fully operational. Extra barriers, fencing, and seating have been installed at various sports fields to encourage social distancing. DPW has been raising manholes and repairing storm inlets in anticipation of milling and overlay operations starting on April 28th on parts of Woodland Avenue, Linden, Independence Court, Barden, Serpico Lane, and North Street. DPW is negotiating a shared services agreement with the town of Kearney to buy slightly used snow removal equipment at a steep discount. Lastly, DPW will be topping off both salt domes next week to take advantage of post-winter price discounts. For the Recreation Department, after a brief delay due to COVID precautions, Madison Little League has now resumed activities. Thanks to the Health Department and Marlene Dolan again for their continued support throughout the process. The Del Barton basketball court renovation project is now complete and open for public use. The courts were repaved, relined, and brand new rims and acrylic backboards were installed. Thank you to the over 300 coaches who have submitted background check applications and completed the additional training that is now involved. Your continued cooperation provides another layer of safety and security for Madison children. And finally, some summer time slots still remain open at the MRC. Please reach out to Zach Ellis at recreation@rosenet.org as soon as possible to reserve a space. The Environmental Commission, to encourage more residents purchasing electronic vehicles, on April 22nd, Earth Day, the Environmental Commission of Madison, Chatham Borough, and Chatham Township held an electric vehicle expo at the Sunday Motor Cafe in Madison. The latest electronic vehicles from 9 manufacturers were on display, as were electric bicycles were also there. Many visitors to the expo were concerned about the range of an EV electronic vehicle between charges and were surprised to learn that many could go well over 200 miles between charges. Residents learned how to find maps of where chargers in New Jersey exist. The electronic vehicles are slightly more expensive than their fossil-fueled ancestors, but for the most, the fuel savings and savings in less than maintenance and oil changes could pay for the difference in 2 to 4 years. For the sustainable shade tree management, Madison will celebrate Arbor Day on May 1st at 9 a.m. in the upper level of Summerhill Park. This is the 36th year that Madison has been awarded Tree City, USA, and the 14th year for the Tree City Growth Award. After the mayor reads the Madison proclamation and brief comments from Shade Tree board members, the plan is to help finish the planting of 3 new horse chestnut trees. This is part of the rejuvenation of Summerhill Park. Residents are encouraged to attend. All of the sites for the spring street tree plantings have been identified, marked, and plantings should begin within the next couple of weeks. Each year, there are a small number of residents who do not want a new street tree, and we urge them to reconsider and support the planting of trees in Madison. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And now Community Affairs, Ms. Cohen.
Thank you, Mayor. As Mayor Conley said earlier, we awarded the winner of the May Day T-shirt contest, art contest, and May Day is this coming Saturday. Please, if you know you're going to be able to volunteer, email ddc@rosenet.org. But of course, you're always welcome to show up. There's plenty of mulching to go on around town. Obviously, we are going to try and have people form their own pods and keep social distancing, and masking will be in effect. The Taste of Madison will take place between June 3rd and June 17th. Ticket purchasers will receive a restaurant passport, which will include some great extras. 50/50 and Tricky Tray raffles will be held as part of the event. More details will be coming soon. Prior to that, a new event in town, May 8th, Cars and Coffee Porsche Showcase will be held at Sunday Motor Company between 9 and 12 to look at the 70 years of the evolution of the Porsche. Something new and different to coming to town. The next meeting of the DDC is scheduled for Thursday, May 20th at 7:15 via Zoom. The Chamber of Commerce is accepting nominations for the annual Extra Mile Award. This award recognizes Madison employees who provide excellent customer service. Nominations must be submitted and postmarked by June 1st. More information may be found on the Chamber's website. The Chamber's annual awards night is scheduled for Tuesday, June 8th, 6 p.m. at Shanghai Jazz. Tickets will be $55 and the evening will include light fare, cash bar, award ceremony, and door prizes. The Madison Community Arts Center, the Red Cross Blood Drive was a success. Another one has been scheduled for July. The Spring Ahead into the Arts series continues with upcoming performances this Friday night of Hatchet Jack, May 7th, Renegade Jazz Band with swing dancers, May 14th, Arts by the People. New long-term rentals are coming in, and people are inquiring, as COVID restrictions get released, about using the space. MACA had a board meeting this past week. Joe Gorin was replaced for the Shakespeare Theater's rep by Robert Warshinsky. Activities at the Art Center are picking up as COVID restrictions are relaxed, which will increase revenue moving forward. That, together with fundraising and grants, give MACA an optimistic outlook for continued progress in the financial domain. MACA will be hosting the Hidden Figures of Madison on June 4th and 5th at the Art Center. Kanisha Tucker and Daniel Nebris, guests at the MACA board meeting, spoke in depth about this project, which MACA is pleased to support and host. Lastly, MACA will be taking a leadership role in the Madison Public Art Project. Our next board meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, June 9th at 4 p.m. We are hoping to have an in-person meeting at the Art Center if possible. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And Utilities, Ms. Ehrlich.
Thank you, Mayor. From the Electric Department. The Electric Department has been working on the new compactor that Public Works is having installed at the recycling center. The Electric Department reports that the installation is now complete and ready to be tested. So thanks to them for their assistance in bringing that online. The Electric Department is currently upgrading the overloaded transformers in the Crestwood Drive section, as well as replacing old and rotted poles on Delbarton Drive, Crestwood Drive, and Rosewood Drive. The department has been working on Main Street at the site of the Burger King renovation. The contractor there will be changing to underground electrical service, so the department removed the overhead service and will be removing the primary cable from the parking lot, a job that the department knows is long overdue. So glad to see that improvement. And the standby crew was called out on Wednesday, April 21st, to remove large tree limbs from the primary lines in front of 181 Central Ave, where a large tree had lost a major limb in the high winds from that evening storm. The Water Department reports that the emergency generators at the wells and treatment plants have all been tested and serviced for the first quarter of 2021. The Water Department excavated multiple curb boxes which were non-operational due to snowplow damage or age, allowing those homeowners to perform necessary plumbing repairs. And lastly, a critical conservation reminder from the water department to please install rain sensors in your electronic lawn sprinklers or have your sensors checked and serviced to help save water and not sprinkle lawns on rainy days. These reduce zone times to a minimum because the water you use to have a green lawn is everyone's drinking water. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. And health, Landrian.
Thank you, Mayor. Today, Governor Murphy announced several expansions to reopening to take effect May 10th, including increased indoor capacity limits for catering halls, including weddings and proms, political events, funerals, and performances to 50% of the room capacity, up to a maximum of 250 persons. Outdoor gathering limits will increase to 500 individuals, and large venue, 1,000 or more fixed seats capacity will increase to 50% with 6 feet between seated groups. As of today, Madison reports 812 confirmed COVID cases. Of those, 19 are considered active. Since April 3rd, Morris County has seen a steady decline in COVID cases. A reminder that all New Jersey residents 16 years of age and older are eligible to receive COVID-19 vaccines. The single-dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine is now again being administered after a brief pause. And within Madison, Madison Pharmacy, Walgreens, and Stop and Shop are all now administering vaccines. Seniors who need assistance registering for the New Jersey vaccine scheduling system can call 856-249-7007. This phone number serves those residents 65 years of age and older. And if you need more information regarding the COVID pandemic, visit rosenet.org. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And now we'll move on to the budget hearing. Before I open the hearing, we're going to have Jim do an update. Astrid, do you want to tee it up or you want to hold your comments to post-hearing?
Maybe I'll wait until
Yep.
after. Yeah.
Yep.
I thought your comments were good to open with, Austria, whatever.
Okay, you think my comments are good to open with, so you'd like me to go first?
That's okay.
Okay, I will, absolutely. Okay, good evening, everyone. We're going to hold our budget hearing. And I've had the privilege of serving the residents and voting on more than a dozen budgets. This year, I'm particularly grateful for the stewardship of our CFO, Jim Burnett, because the borough has an adequate fund balance to cover the shortfalls caused by the global health pandemic. And I wish to thank everyone who helped to create this budget, including our borough administrator, Ray Cody, our CFO, Jim Burnett, the department heads, and my fellow council members. So at the last meeting, the last council meeting, several residents questioned why the borough had more cash on hand in 2020 as compared to 2015. So I'd like to address that. In 2015, we had a very small capital program. The borough finances were not in great shape, and we had been on the credit watch from Standard & Poor's. Since then, the mayor and councils have worked hard to stabilize the finances by establishing reserves, increasing transparency, and creating strategic planning guides. And because of those actions, we were taken off the Standard & Poor's credit watch, and we did regain our AAA credit rating. Yes, today we have more cash than we did in 2015 for many good reasons. For one, we have $3 million more in Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Most of that money comes from the developers rather than the residents. Those funds will now be spent in the next few years to build our affordable housing. Other towns like Chatham Township, you may have read in the paper, do not have these funds and will have to spend tax dollars to build their affordable housing obligation. Our Open Space, Recreation, and Historic Preservation Trust Fund has more money in it than 2015. Over $400,000 is reserved for turf field reskinning. Money has been set aside to pay off the debt of the MRC land purchase, and there's $300,000 set aside for land remediation. Because of this trust fund, the borough can restore the east wing of Hartley Dodge Memorial and the plaza in front of Hartley Dodge Memorial. Plans are underway for a new handicap accessible playground at Dodge Field, And in the past few years, field improvements have been made throughout town. So we have also aggressively sought grants from the New Jersey Green Acres program, as well as the county, to help pay down the debt of the MRC, land purchase, and also to develop trails within our parks. We have 1 million reserved in the water utility to replace the meters with automatic meters, and we have 1.3 million in the electric department for substation repairs, or it may have to be used for upgrades with JCP&L. So the point is, we've created a very stable financial framework for the residents. Over the last 5 years, we have spent over $30 million in capital improvements. This year's budget includes over $6 million in capital improvements, and it is critical we maintain scheduled repairs of our roads and infrastructure, and that we can give our employees the equipment they need to do their jobs. So we are proposing a modest 2% tax increase to make sure we deliver the services our residents expect. And we've been working on this budget for approximately 5 months. We introduced it on March 22nd. By law, we now had to wait 28 days before we could have the final hearing, which is tonight, to make sure the public has an opportunity to review and comment. It's a very transparent process with all discussions held in public and recorded. Overall, we have had very few complaints about the current budget proposal. Some may ask why the borough can't use the stimulus money we will receive from the American Rescue Plan to offset a 2% tax raise. The plan specifically states it cannot be used for tax relief. We also had that confirmed on April 19th, received an email from the governor's office confirming, and I quote, "These funds are not to be used for tax relief." So I want to thank my fellow council members for their comments and thoughts on the 2021 budget. We are still in very uncertain economic times due to the pandemic, and it is reassuring to me that Madison is in a position to maintain all services and capital projects. Thank you.
And Jim, as CFO, you any more updates?
Most should, no, I'm teasing. No PowerPoint slides. Valerie Dolan, our auditor, is here. I just want to remind folks that from 2013 to 2020, Madison only had a 4% tax increase on the municipal for an existing home, where other towns in our area, I'm not going to name them, but they're in previous PowerPoints. I don't want to throw shade, but had 9, 10, 23, 25, 18% increase. At the same time, we had 4%. That increase on the average home from 2013 to 2020 was only $127 in municipal taxes. The 2% that we're asking for this year is prudent and necessary, and will only result in about $4.21 per month, or about $50 a year for that average home. As a reminder, municipal revenues are still off in the first 3 months of the year. Court revenues are off $20,000. Interest on deposits is off $65,000, and daily parking revenue is off $23,000. It's reasonable to assume that our revenues are going to be off $600,000 to $800,000 compared to 2019. We have increased in sewage treatment costs and pension costs. Our funding for capital is down, and that's something we want to bring back in. Over the years, we're able to continue to fund capital because of balances that we had from prior years. Where administration is very concerned about tax appeals for our office buildings, and this budget helps us maintain, or hopefully maintain, firm financial footing going forward. When you craft a budget and when you're dealing with municipal finances, I've said this a couple of times, I just want to reiterate, it's like driving an ocean liner or a cargo ship, and you point it in the direction, you set the course, and you take your hands off the wheel for a year. You don't know what's going to happen. You can't adjust. At home, you can adjust your budget. A company can adjust their budget. We don't adjust our budgets typically. So as Councilwoman Bailey said, there are good reasons why we have more cash on hand now in 2015. There's close to $6 million in major expenses that we expect to happen in the next few years. $3 million in affordable housing, $1 million on the water meter project, $500,000 or more on the substation repairs. And one thing I hadn't thought of till this afternoon, but it's obvious. We have an $800,000 fire truck where we've set the money aside and we're in the process of buying it, but we're not. So that shows up as a cash balance. When we crafted this budget, we wanted to make sure that we continue to deliver on the required services, including public safety and purchasing things like fire trucks. And I believe all of those required services, or all the items I just mentioned, are required: affordable housing, water meter project, fire truck. Recognizing Ben Wolkowitz's excellent work and the work of other volunteers, we continue to abide by strategic planning guidelines, with maintenance of our fund balance being a really key metric that we're going to monitor. We are working on managing that. As Austria said, some have mentioned why we're not using federal stimulus dollars. And as she said, I'll quote it again, quote from the governor's office: "Things have not changed at the federal level has made it clear that these funds are not to be used to reduce taxes." I want to reinforce as my final comment on hopefully on the 2021 budget, that going forward, you are going to hear me talk about a goal of reducing our reliance on the electric utility. It is a strategic planning guideline, and it's something we're going to need to focus on in the upcoming years. Just want to serve that up as maybe an appetizer for 2022's budget. So, and that's it, Mayor. I'll take any questions, and Val Dolan is available for questions.
And just to reinforce your analogy about the cargo ship, that if you take your hands off the wheel and allow it to go straight, before you know it, you've blocked the Suez Canal, and the economy of the world has come. So it is very important that we keep the ship going straight.
I just teed that up for you, didn't I?
Yep. And Valerie, thank you for joining us. Valerie Dolan is our auditor. She made some comments on the budget when it was introduced, and will be available post-hearing to respond to any questions or comments. So at this point, I will open the hearing, and this is for anyone wishing to comment or ask questions on the budget. As always, what we will do is get your comments and capture them and your questions, and answer them after we close the hearing. And also with our other, similar to our other comment periods, we ask you to try to keep comments to 3 minutes, but we give you 1 minute grace period, and you'll be stopped 4 minutes. And when you are recognized, state your name and address, and then you can start your comments. If you're on a phone line, you can raise your hand by hitting *9. And if you are on the phone, you must state your name and address immediately, because otherwise you run the risk of being cut off. And if you do want to comment, don't hesitate to raise your hand in advance. You can always take it down if comments are covered already. And now we will bring up Dennis Schreiber.
Dennis Schreiber, 9 Amelia Court. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. And kudos to Mr. Burnett for portraying or representing a fiscal picture that I didn't realize we were in such dire straits, on the verge of collapse. But thank you for bringing it to our attention. When the federal money comes in, you can't use it to reduce taxes. What do you anticipate doing with the funds?
Well, we'll capture that question and answer it at the end of the hearing.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it.
And now I bring up Laura Simone.
Hi, how are you?
Welcome. State your name and address and your comments on the budget then.
Yes, my name is Laura Simeone, 124 Central Avenue. My question is this: over the past several council meetings, I've heard questions regarding the fire department needing to replace 2 recently retired firefighters. The fire chief stated in his budget presentation a few weeks ago that he needed to have all the recent retirees replaced. So I'm just confused as to whether both firefighters will be hired. And can you tell me when you will be replacing the firefighters?
We'll answer that question. Any other comments or questions on the budget?
No, thank you.
Thank you. And Tom Harron Potus.
Hello, Mayor. Hello, Council. Tom Harlan, Pudas 27 Pomeroy Road. Thank you for letting me participate for a couple of minutes. Am I allowed to comment on the agenda discussions also, Mayor? You just want to?
No, this is just budget hearing, so budget only. We'll be coming to that shortly.
Okay. So with regards to approving the entire budget, the way the open space and historic preservation budget was presented in previous meetings, that's what's being approved also as part of the entire budget. So that's one question. And then when you planned a strategy for the budget, does that include the same costs from 2020 to operate and employ our two divisions of public safety, which is the police and the firemen, or have those budgets been realigned based on some retirements? I know you have some new hirees, which I guess we can comment on at a separate time, Mayor, because this is just a comment on the budget. So that's all I really had. I think Mr. Burnett and Councilwoman Oshry did a very good job organizing the budget and giving a very thorough presentations over the last 6 weeks. I know there's a lot of challenges in keeping it balanced, but we've always said that we want to just be also sensitive to what the residents are experiencing too, with regards to their stresses with the budget. But I think that Jim's done a very good job up to now, and hopefully we'll come through 2021 keeping the borough services the same as they are. But if you could address my other questions, I'd really appreciate it.
Thank you. I have captured those, and my team will make sure we cover that. And now we will bring up Chris Holland.
Thank you, Mayor. Chris Holland, 11 Locust Street, Madison. Just going real quick back to Councilperson Bailey's comments about the Open Space Trust Fund. There was a mention of the all access playground at Dodge in her comments. On the original budget, I believe that was slated for 2022. I'd just like to know why that was moved up into 2021 and under whose guidelines was that moved up?
All right, I've captured that. Any other questions or comments?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you.
I can
And
take the
now
questions here.
bring up Christine Boyle.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Good evening. This is Christine Boyle at 9 Buckingham Drive. I just wanted to reiterate prior comments in that I thank the council and Mr. Burnett for all of their hard work on the budget and for all of the transparency in these meetings and the ability to understand a very complex situation and a responsible budget for the upcoming year. Thank you.
Thank you. And last chance to raise your hand for budget questions or comments. Seeing none, I close the hearing. And before we introduce or move the just a couple of those questions, and our staff will support me on it or back up or fill in any details that I may not have. Federal funds. When it was passed, we were told that we would see the 50% within a month and the remainder in a year. We have not seen the first tranche of funding. We're also waiting for guidelines for spending from the through the Treasury Department. And so what we have here is a prudent budget that does not rely on funding that we don't know the exact rules on. If we spend it, we have to send it all back, all that has been misspent. There was a question on the firefighters. Historically, the fire department has not always been at 14. It has ranged from various levels. We started the process for hiring the one firefighter, and we anticipate that to move forward in the near future. And I'll jump ahead to the public safety question, because they're tied together. As far as funding, one of the firefighter positions had been funded primarily through building permit costs because it was primarily serving as a inspector. That is no longer the case. So the funding level for the actual cost of the firefighters is consistent as previous years. And Jim, please correct me if I'm wrong on that. The police is, we are making some changes in staffing, but this is to maintain the same levels. Tonight, you'll see that we have 2 resolutions to hire 2 patrolmen. And we are changing the structure. We are naming John Misha as acting chief tonight, and we are naming Joe Longo as acting captain. The captain position has not been filled in a good number of years, and there was concern of the impact on our residents if we created another leadership position without an offset. There is currently an administrative sergeant position, which is not necessary with the new structure in the police department. So we are eliminating the administrative sergeant position, but we'll be, as again, creating the captain position. So we will have 5 sergeants, which is traditionally the method that the leadership in the police department has been, which is 1 per patrol division. So that's 4 plus 1 for the detective division. So that returns us to the typical staffing. The open space budget, that is not technically part of this approval tonight. The open space, we do have several, as has been mentioned in Ostrey's report, several projects that are queued up. It is when the ordinance is introduced and approved that the actual money is then encumbered from the open space. And Dodge Field Playground, the timing on that, originally intended was for 2021, and we're still trying to follow up with the original replacement of the building and upgrade that. Jim, Ray, anything else to cover from?
Dodge Field may be accelerated due to the possibility of a grant. As you said, Mayor, open space, you're 100% right. It's not part of the actual budget process here. We're voting on the electric utility, water utility, and municipal budget. Capital programs and open space programs are done not on a single vote. Tonight it's a single vote to set the budget for the police department, set the budget for the court, set the budget for construction. When it comes to capital items and open space items, you vote individually on ordinances for those where there's an introduction and then a hearing. In terms of the federal stimulus dollars, honestly, we have received 0 guidance other than we can't use it for tax. We haven't even gotten official word from the state. The money's going to go to the state, and then the state's going to give us the funds. We don't know when we're going to get it. We don't know exactly how much. We've seen what's been published out there, and honestly, we don't want to make a mistake and goof it up. So guidance and the actual amount are forthcoming, and I'm sure council will be talking about that down the road. Certainly, one of the items that is allowed is capital. Since our capital budget is down so much, this may be a lifeboat for us to fund important projects. One of the important projects that we're still grappling with how to fund, that's a needed project, is a radio program, which would serve the ambulance corps, the electric utility department of public works, fire department, and police department. So those funds could help with that. The mayor, you're right about the fire department budget. I also want to reiterate, remind everyone, we have a volunteer committee, an ad hoc volunteer committee that we've created to try to stimulate more volunteers for the fire department. And the patrolmen that were hired tonight are replacements of officers that left. And in terms of Thomas's other question about the cost for public safety, they're relatively the same last year to this year.
Thank you very much. And just to clarify, the distribution of the stimulus money from the is larger municipalities, much larger than Madison, will get it directly from the federal government, but Madison, it's going to flow through the state and then on to us.
And my guess on that, Mayor, is it's going to be an insertion into the budget. Is almost like we get a grant. When we get a grant later on in the year, you'll hear an item called the Chapter 159 insertion in the budget. We've done it before for Click It or Ticket, or we're going to have to do it for, I think, Clean Communities, because that's not in the budget. Other items like that. These grant funds may come in that way. We still are working out the details on that. Is that the way towns are going to do it, Val? If you don't mind me putting you on the spot, is it going to be kind of through an insertion, or what are the thoughts from you?
Yeah, that's what people are saying. It's going to be one of 2 ways. It's either going to come in through a 159, in which case it'll be an amendment to the budget, where it brings in the revenue and adds the line of appropriation that doesn't exist. But like you said, we still don't have any guidelines on how we're going to be able to spend that money and whether they're going to bring that money in and let you set it aside or use it as a funding source for a capital ordinance. They really haven't even decided at this point how we're going to cycle it through the budget. So obviously, and as any funding that comes in for a municipality, the budget cycle is a requirement. I don't think the division at this point has even gotten the information from Treasury on how they're going to give it to us. So hopefully we're supposed to have that sometime in the next couple of months is when we're hearing it. And hopefully by the fall, maybe we're receiving our first tranche. And that way we'll have a plan for it as that going forward. But they are encouraging and using those funds for one-time expenditures to stimulate the capital that might be cut from budgets or any of that type of thing, not necessarily operational. That won't be sustained because it's a one-time allotment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vep. All right. So I think we covered our questions, so I will now ask them. So resolution 117-2021, resolution of the Borough of Madison finally adopting the 2021 budget and tax resolution. May I have a motion?
Mayor, I move R 117-2021.
Second,
And council discussion, please. Any other comments or questions from the council members? Okay, seeing none. Oh, I'm sorry, Rachel.
Sorry, thank you, Mayor. I just want to reiterate some of the important points we heard tonight, that we are quite fortunate that Madison has an adequate fund balance to cover the budget shortfalls that are really bedeviling many similarly sized towns in New Jersey. We're maintaining all services and a moderate level of capital investment despite the loss of municipal revenue that we've discussed over the last few months. We are managing this in part by slightly increasing the amount of electric utility surplus to be transferred to the municipal budget to cover operating expenses, although as Jim mentioned, we will be addressing next year and in the future how we use that electric utility fund balance in a responsible way. We know that we need to cover known infrastructure expenses like required upgrades to the sewage plant as we near capacity for sewage treatment, electrical upgrades that are due to our new upcoming agreement with JCP&L, and be prudent about the future risks that the administration has identified. And so, you know, I think we are fortunate that in the midst of the economic uncertainties that we're facing just right here in the borough, you know, setting aside the state and federal issues with the economy, that this is a prudent budget, that a 2% increase in the framework of a 4% increase over the past several years is a fair one and a prudent one that balances our needs, our known expenses, and keeps us on sure footing with continuing capital investments in the town. So I think I want to thank Jim and thank all of our professionals for developing this budget and presenting it so clearly to us and to the public.
Sorry. Any other comments from the council? A roll call vote, please.
Bailey,
Yes.
Ms. Byrne,
yes.
Mr. Hoover,
Yes.
Ms. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich,
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And thank you for our team for all the work. And Val, thank you for joining us tonight.
Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you. We now move on to communications and petitions. Any communications and petitions?
Yes, Mayor, we have several. We had 2 emails from resident Melissa Elias on behalf of Mayor regarding the stimulus funding, and an email dated April the 25th from residents Alex Jennings and Christine Preston regarding communication with the Madison Police Department.
Thank you very much. And now we move on to our first of 2 discussion periods. And this is when you may comment on agenda items. If you want to comment on any item that I'm not about to list, you have to wait until after our ordinance hearings. And these are the items you may comment on. We have discussion on affordable housing, which is our developer selection, and the electric utility interconnection agreement with JCP&L, has been alluded to already. So you can comment on those two, and you may comment on these ordinances, resolutions rather. Ordinances will have a hearing. Resolution 118 is appointing John Mishik to the position of acting chief effective today. And this is until February 1, 2022, when Darren Madison comes off the books. Resolution 119 of the appointment of Lieutenant Joe Longo to acting police captain in the police department. Resolution 120, appointing Renato Capelas Jr. to the position of police officer. Resolution 121, appointing Vincent Delandro to police as a police officer. Resolution 122 is adopting an affirmative marketing plan for the Borough of Madison. We did this in a previous meeting. This is correcting some errors to meet our obligation with our housing settlement. Excuse me. 123 is setting salaries for full-time non-union personnel. Union personnel have an automatic salary increase, so this takes care of our department heads without or outside the union agreements. Resolution 124 is awarding a contract for preventative maintenance testing and inspection services to American Electrical Testing Company. This is not to exceed $131,325, billed at $43,775 per year, coming out of the three respective next 3 year respective operating budgets. Resolution 125 is authorizing submission of New Jersey Historic Trust Fund grant application for restoration of the Madison Masonic Lodge, and this is to the State Historic Trust Fund. Resolution 126 is approving a special event permit for Cars and Coffee that was mentioned in the report. The Porsche showcase to be held at the Sunday Motor Company. Resolution 127 approving raffle license applications for the Rotary Club. Resolution 128 is designating the RPM Development Group as developer of 28 Walnut Street and 42 and also Community Place, subject to a developer agreement and other documents. So this is a conditional appointment of RPM. You'll be hearing about this shortly in our agenda discussion. Resolution 128 is authorizing a interconnection agreement with JCP&L, which you're going to hear about shortly also. Resolution 130 is approving temporary signs for month of May to promote a virtual 5K race. Resolution 131 is authorizing submission of recycling tonnage grant application. And resolution 132 is expenditure for recycling taxes pursuant to PL 2007, Chapter 311. Resolution 133 is approving the developers agreement between the Borough of Madison and Park Valley Madison for a redevelopment of 4 Community Place. So again, you may comment on any of those resolutions or the 2 agenda items I mentioned. If you want to comment on other topics, please wait until the next period coming up shortly. Please raise your hand by clicking on a hand, or hit *9 if you're on the phone. And as you're recognized, please state your name, your address, and then the agenda item if that you are commenting on. Again, if it's not one of those I mentioned, please hold off for the next round. Thomas, you are on.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Happy to speak to you all again. Tom Haralamputis, 27 Pomeroy Road. I want to just give a shout out to Lieutenant John Mishia and Lieutenant Joseph Longo for being promoted to their acting positions. I think these are great borough servants that have been working very tirelessly for us, and they deserve to be promoted. And I don't know how the hiring process will pan out in the future, but hopefully they get strong consideration. I would highly recommend them. The next thing I would like to comment on, please, is the resolution about the housing update, selection of a developer. I'm not exactly sure if you are already approving the plans that have been proposed, or if this developer is going to be helping us to move forward with the plans at the Civic Building. This is, I assume that's what we're talking about for the new affordable housing project over there on Walnut Street. The other question I had, or well, it's a question, I'm just not really sure. What is the resolution of certifying submission of expenditure for recycling taxes? That's not something that I really ever saw before, but it might have been in the budget every year. I don't really know. The other question that I had from tonight is, let me see here. Sorry, there's a few things that I just saw tonight. So we're not commenting on ordinances, Mayor? Only on
Correct.
resolutions.
You would comment on those when you have the hearing.
Okay. I think that's it then. Thank you very much, Mayor and Council.
Thank you. And just a quick, we are appointing the developer for the Civic Center and the Community Place. We are not approving the plan. While you'll hear shortly that part of the selection process was seeing what their vision for those properties are. It will go through a very extensive process with planning board involvement for that process. So there'll be a lot more to come. And Jim, I'll let you address the recycling.
Mayor, that's a ministerial action where we have to ratify the amount of recycling tax that we actually paid. Every ton that goes to the Morris County tipping station, the MCMUA, there's a recycling tax. We certify to that dollar amount, and then we actually, through submission of grant documentation, which Bonnie Mulcahy did this year. Congratulations, Bonnie. Thank you for doing that. We are able to recapture those funds in the recycling.
Thank you. All right, now we will bring up John Hanahan. Please again state your name, your address, and the agenda items that you were commenting on.
Yeah, hi, John Hanahan, 7 Kensington Road. Talking about the transition in the police chief here. In Madison, we're fortunate to live in a remarkably safe community and enjoy a strong relationship with our police. With the current times of uncertainty, a crop of public safety changes are under consideration nationwide, and a new police chief expected here in Madison. We have an opportunity to hear the MPD's approach to community policing, including how our public safety might be improved. Open communication and engagement between the MPD and the community are perhaps more important now than ever. Depending on the police chief selection timeline, I strongly encourage even our acting police chief to hold periodic public forums as occur in other communities. These forums would, 1, keep residents apprised of the MPD's efforts and accomplishments, and 2, allow residents to pose their priorities, concerns, and questions. And lastly, I echo the warm thanks to the departing Chief Deshenson for his many years of devoted service to Madison. Thank you.
Thank you, John, and very good comments, because we in the interview process with both the acting chief and acting captain, a lot of the questions were around that area. So I think you will see a lot of activity bringing the police out to the public far beyond what Madison has already done to get the communications going. Now we'll bring up Chris Holland, and again, name, address, and state the agenda item you were commenting on.
Thank you, Mayor. Chris Holland, 11 Locust Street, Madison. This is in regards to Resolution 125. Just from a bit of background, this really pertains to going back to a letter that was sent into the mayor on March 7th that has yet to be addressed. The questions that we developed at the Recreation Advisory Committee level. We're trying to identify open space trust money for certain, or for a project at the Madison Pool and Memorial Park for developing basketball and paddle. And one of the things that I would like to know is one of the questions that was in that March 7th letter was, what is the relationship with the Borough and the Masonic Lodge? And there is also a $350,000 possible project listing on the Open Space Trust Fund for the Masonic Lodge. And I'd like to know how they relate to the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Dutch. And yeah, as you know, it's the Open Space Recreation and Historic Preservation Fund, and two key elements with that are related to historic preservation. As we know, if you don't preserve history when the time comes, that it's forever lost. And so there is a sense of priority that has to be dealt with. It's not much different than also with land purchase, such as the 49 acres that hosts the passive and active recreation at the MRC, that if we had not acted at that opportunity, there'd be office buildings there. So those are create a very high priority. In order to make the Masonic Lodge a possibility to save what is the oldest church what was the oldest church in Madison, a partnership has to be developed with the Masonic Lodge, which would open it up to the public, and it would be a partnership with the Borough of Madison. And so if this come to fruition, a twofold win. In fact, we save the historic church across from the historic cemetery, and then create a public partnership that allows people to see this great building. Oscar, would you have anything else to add to that?
No, I think you've got it, Mayor. I mean, we're looking at being able to have it open to the community, to have an extension of things that we do at the Borough Hall, and it's such an important part of our streetscape, and it's protected by and it's on the National Registry. And it's what, when people talk about Madison, they say, oh, we love the historic downtown, and this is part of it. So we're trying to find a creative way to create a partnership. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And now we'll bring up Denise again, name, address, and the agenda item you are addressing.
Thanks, Mayor. This is Denise Katz at 24 Parkside Ave. This is regarding resolution number 118, the appointment of an acting chief. First of all, of course, thank you so much to Chief Datchison for his 30 years of service. I thought it was especially touching that he went back to his first day roots on Main Street, and I wish him all the luck in his retirement. Couple questions about the hiring process. First of all, wanted to see if you could share kind of a rough timeline. Are there milestones? How long do you expect the hiring process to go through? And are there milestones to move from acting into the permanent police chief position? And also, who are the key participants in determining those milestones in that timeline? Is there going to be an opportunity for the public to be a part of it? And who are the people that will be making those decisions? Also, the acting position, would you call that more of a sort of just keeping the position warm and keeping the lights on? Or do you look at it as a sort of a very long interview process? And in which case, would the public be informed about how that interview process is going? And then lastly, just wanted to sort of understand the process better and find out about other candidates. If we're only looking at internal candidates, I wondered why, and if there are external candidates being considered, how are you finding them? And what if no one was interested? How would you sort of go about the process of finding more candidates? Again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Denise. I won't even go with that last question, which is if nobody's interested. But anyway, there are very strict guidelines, much different than the hiring anywhere else in the borough for the most part, that we must hire the chief from within the department. So there is not an external search per se, unless, of course, no one wants it. And then, of course, we'd have to address that. The comments of, is this an acting position? Our expectations, and this was made very clear with the interview by the council members and myself, is we expect full leadership out of this, out of Don Misha. The title is acting chief because we do not give a permanent position until the previous one is off the books. But we want him to be leading the department as he would if that qualifier was not in front of the title. And will be a process to evaluate going forward to make sure our police department is the most successful that it can possibly be. With the comments earlier, the communications and conversations with the community will be very much a part of what we expect to see out of our new leadership in the police department. Ray, anything else you would need to add for the hiring process? Or should we start with finding the mute button?
No, Mayor, you captured it. There's a state statute that restricts hiring opportunities to within the department. There's also a police promotional ordinance that lays out the process to be followed by the governing body in appointing a chief. The job was posted. The only candidate there were two candidates who were eligible. John Misha was the only candidate who actually entered that promotional process. So the field was narrowed to one, and he's acting, as you indicated, until the chief goes off the payroll on February 1st, 2022. And this is an interim period, but you expect him to serve as the chief with, that's why he was appointed effective tonight. Basically, we need to have a chief. The moment Chief Datchison walked out the door, we didn't have a vacuum of leadership, that we'd have a leadership team in place, which would be acting Chief John Misha and acting Captain Joseph Longo.
Thank you. And now we bring up Claire Whitcomb. Name, address, and the agenda item you were commenting on.
Hi, Claire Whitcomb, 12 Fairwood Road. I don't know anything about policing, but I do know about the environment, and I just want to give Lieutenant Longo a shout out for being a really good environmental advocate and pioneering the new hybrid vehicles at the police department. So I don't know if that's qualification for promotion, but I like his thinking. I wanted to just say that, Mayor, you gave a little spoiler alert about the affordable housing, and I do recognize the name of the developer, and I did hear it first at a meeting that the MEC held with Princeton, and it was on sustainable affordable housing, and that this developer is clearly qualified in the passive house construction, and I look forward to hearing more, and it's very exciting, I think. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you for recognizing the reputation of our developer and also the work of Joe Longo in getting us into the hybrid world and keeping his eyes in that direction. Now we'll bring up Friends of Madison Public Library, who I'm guessing is Pam Hogan, but since your name is not there, please make sure you state your name, your address, and the agenda item you were commenting on.
Oh, Bob, that's Dave Luber, and I don't know why that came up, other than my wife uses that
All right,
that account.
Another friend of the library.
It shouldn't have come up that way, but I know why it came up that way. Anyway, I'm Dave Luber, 7 Lawrence Road, and I want to speak to Resolution 125. As a member of the Madison Historical Society and the Historic Preservation Commission, I fully support the borough's effort to protect this very important 19th century historic building, what we now know as the Masonic Lodge, and which was, of course, the Presbyterian Church, and to do so with a partnership with the Masonic Lodge and hopefully a very successful trust fund grant application. This is a very important building to maintain and save.
Thank you very much for your comments on the lodge. And seeing no other hands raised, I close this part of the meeting. We will bring our professional team on board for our first agenda discussion item, which is the affordable housing update. And we'll talk about the developer selection. As Claire mentioned, we've already sent out a teaser on that. While they're coming up on to join us, let me give you a little background. As you may know, that last year and then on our reorganization meeting, I appointed a subcommittee to work on the selection process for a developer and work with the developer in developing these two sites and meeting our obligation for not only meet our legal obligation, the moral obligation for affordable housing in the borough of Madison. In the committee is myself and council members Austria Bailey and Rachel Ehrlich, former council members Carmela Vitale and Pat Rowe, Madison Housing Authority member, and also an expert in financing related to affordable housing market pride. We were supported by our planners, Dr. Susan Blickstein, and our special planner related to affordable housing, Beth McManus. Also our housing finance experts, Bob Powell and Jerry Doherty of Nassau Capital. Also supported by our attorneys, Greg Castano and Jim Bruno. I'll be hearing from Jim shortly. And also our borough administrator, Ray Cody, and CFO, Jim Burnett. We had put out a request for qualifications throughout the state to find the qualifications of developers. We received responses, from 9 developers. The committee then reviewed these developers and their responses, and 6 were selected for the RFP round. So then they resubmitted, and as opposed to the request for qualifications, it's really talked about their background. They then, for the RFP round, had to talk about the site, what their vision for the site was, how would they do financing, and so on. So out of the 6 that we sent out, all responded, and 4 were selected as finalists. We then spent an immense amount of time, week before last, on Zoom over 2 days to interview each of the 4 finalists. And then we had a follow-up interview process last week, which we called the speed round, which was to close some of the discussions related to their design, as some things came up and they made some changes, and also from their financial models. That then we wrapped up with feedback from our professional team, and our committee then selected RPM to be moving into the round of a qualified developer, that we have to get the agreement settled on. And if that does not happen, we would then move back to Plan B. So let me start with Jim Bruno, who will talk about the developers agreement and the pilot that he is working on, which will then be in the hands of RPM.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Just briefly for the benefit of the public, this is one of the final steps of the process under the settlement agreement that we entered into with Fair Share Housing Corporation as approved by the court. One of those obligations being the construction of an 100% affordable housing project within Madison. The site was selected as part of that process, the Civic Center site in a parcel at the end of Community Place, which was acquired from the Board of Education. Both of those areas, one is an area in need of rehabilitation, another is an area in need of redevelopment as declared by the Mayor and Council, which allows us to select a redeveloper for those sites. Many towns do not go through the process that the Mayor and Council went through the RFQ and the RFP. Some just designate them, but and they can, under the law, just designate one developer and work out the details later. The Housing Committee thought it prudent to go through that process, and as the Mayor said, eventually narrow it down to 4 people, 4 developers. And a lot of the discussion as part of those negotiations and selection process defined what the project would be and what the finances of the project would be. And those are the types of items that will go into the development agreement and the agreement for payment in lieu of taxes, which, pursuant to the court, once we designate the developer tonight, we need to get those agreements in place by May 17th. And again, as I said, the process allows us to narrow down those issues. We have forms already of those development agreement and financial agreement to send to the developer. We're obligated to share with Fair Share Housing and a special court master so we could come to a final agreement by May 17th. Bob Powell, who will speak next, will give you some of the details of that that proposal, as will planner. The only other thing that I would add, however, is that I just lost my, give me 1 second, please. Yes, so the conditional designation will be just that, conditional, and by May 17th, assuming we come to a final agreement, which again, we don't anticipate would be an issue because the project is pretty well laid out and the financial terms are pretty well laid out, will be the final designation on May 17th, with final court approval on May 27th.
All right, thank you, Jim. And let me bring up Dr. Susan Blickfein, our planner, and she will address the design elements as the committee looked at it and helped in the selection process.
Thank you.
There you go.
So I worked with the Affordable Housing Committee with them to support the review of the proposals that were submitted by the 4 redevelopment teams. And as Mr. Bruno indicated, and the mayor as well, there were interviews, very in-depth interviews, and then follow-up sessions to really get into some detail on the range of approaches that each team was proposing on site design, building types, and the quality and durability of proposed building systems and building materials. One of the things that became clear fairly quickly is that, at least in terms of initial concept design, there isn't a lot of flexibility with community place, given the depth and small size of the parcel and how it sits on community place. And so the concept developments were fairly consistent across the proposals for addressing community place with a townhouse style building type. The committee therefore focused more on the approach to the Civic Center site and on the ability of the redeveloper to be a design partner with the borough, and specifically a willingness to explore various green building options. In review of the proposal materials and through the interviews, the committee was able to suss out that there were varying levels of commitment to and experience with high performance energy and sustainable design systems. Some of the proposers had experience with all electric designs and experience with various certifications. But really what stood out with the selected developers' experience and approach was the high quality and durability of building materials, the use of high performance building and energy systems as kind of a baseline for how they build, and a willingness to explore passive house and net zero type approaches with the borough. So in addition to sharing the borough's desire to integrate green building systems, the selected redeveloper also paid careful attention to the context and the Walnut streetscape. The initial concept, I want to emphasize this, there's no site plan, there's no finalized design. The design will take shape, start to take shape much more after the agreements are signed and possibly even before the agreements are signed. But two additional factors did come into play as the committee reviewed the proposals, and that's that the selected redeveloper is really designing the development to the site. RPM is not taking a prepackaged product that it's built elsewhere and just plopping it down in Madison to be efficient in terms of cost. And while that's an acceptable approach, the borough is in a fortunate position with its housing trust fund to be able to explore a more site-specific design. And the second factor that I wanted to call out is that we believe that RPM has the ability to hit the ground running on design and to meet the aggressive timeline set out in the settlement agreement by the court, in part because they have looked at the site in the past. They have done some preliminary designs and engineering on it historically. So in a broad framework, those were the design features that really stood out in the analysis of some of the finer points looking at the 4 proposals that the borough received.
Thank you, Susan, and you covered everything on my list, so excellent job there. And now we'll have to talk about the financial aspect of this. Bob Powell.
Thank you, Mayor. Our advisory work on this, as the mayor indicated, was focused not so much on design, but on the project cost and the sources of funds that would be available to build a project. And the reason that's critical is that this is a 100% affordable housing project, which means the units are not going to be able to charge market rate rents, which in turn means that the project, in the normal context of an apartment project, is going to be very, very unprofitable and requires substantial subsidies in order to be built. The project, roughly speaking, is going to cost between $12.5 and $13 million. Under the settlement agreement that Jim Bruno summarized that the borough has entered into, the borough has a contract with the court to deliver this project in a very short time frame, no matter how successful the borough is in getting third parties, especially governmental agencies, to subsidize the cost of the project. So analyzing the feasibility of the developer's proposed financing plans was an important element, I think, in the Housing Committee's decision on which developer it wanted to select. Our firm analyzed the details of each of the 4 finalist proposals in terms of their proposed development costs and the sources of funds they propose to use. Generally speaking, the sources of funds that are available for this niche in the housing market, the affordable housing market, are low-income housing tax credits, which is a federal subsidy that's provided through a state agency here in New Jersey, the Housing and Mortgage Finance Agency. Housing tax credits, and number 2, long-term tax-exempt mortgage financing, which is also provided in part by the State Housing and Mortgage Finance Agency. As a backstop, most towns in New Jersey who have entered into these settlement agreements to get these projects built have expected that their affordable housing trust funds of the kind you have may also have to be tapped as part of the subsidy package to complete the financing of the project. You have a trust fund, and as I think it was mentioned before, it's expected to have over $3 million and balances in it over the next several years that could be available if needed to make this project financially feasible. We analyzed the financing plans of all 4 developers and determined basically that because the 4 that we had selected were all best in class in terms of experience, reputation, and access to these sources of funds for affordable housing projects, we determined that the criteria that ought to be used to pick the winning developer would not largely be focused on the financing plans, because all 4 of them understood and had experience with the traditional sources of 100% financing, tax credit experience, mortgage financing experience, and also experience with other sources of affordable housing financing from non-governmental agencies. So that made the decision, I think, about the selection of a developer weigh heavily in the committee's mind on quality of design, creativity, and the ability to work well with the borough team on what's going to be a complicated project to get designed and approved and built in the difficult time frame we have. In addition, the borough has a couple of other advantages in financing this project, which we developed in the latter stages of our evaluation. We have been able to work out an agreement with your housing authority, the Madison Housing Authority, to utilize what are called Section 8 project-based vouchers that the Housing Authority has in its inventory. Vouchers that can be used for the project to increase the revenue that the project's going to be generating once it's built by a significant amount. Very few towns in New Jersey have access to these project-based vouchers that can boost the income of a project like this. Madison's fortunate to have that through the Housing Authority. What that means is that the loan on this project is probably going to be $1.5 million greater than it otherwise would be if we didn't have access to the vouchers. We also are going to be exploring what kinds of tax credits will be used to fund the project. There are a couple of kinds. There are 9% tax credits and there are 4% tax credits. This is not the evening to go into the weeds on the distinctions there, but we find ourselves with the opportunity with this developer to pick and choose once the final design and the final cost of the project is locked up and the drawings are done and the plans are approved, to take advantage of a number of options with sources of funding that, in my professional opinion, will probably result in no more than a standard project without extraordinary energy efficiency, requiring no more than maybe $500,000 of money from your trust fund. And when I say a standard design project, that's a project that obviously is fully compliant with all current building permits and has has energy efficient appliance packages and a certain LEED certification. That's what is being built in this business today, is that kind of green type of project. But we've also talked to RPM about going beyond that, and we'll have more discussion about this later, which is going way beyond that in terms of designing a project that is at a scale of energy efficiency that is best in class and that is somewhat unprecedented in this business, which would, on the one hand, raise the initial development cost, but create a building that is extremely energy efficient and is subjected to very lower aspects of physical obsolescence over the next 25 or 30 years. And the Housing Trust Fund has sufficient money, more than a sufficient amount of money in it, to support that initiative if that's the direction that the borough decides to go. So with all of that taken into account, our evaluation indicates that RPM is one of the strongest, most experienced developers in this field, one of the most successful in obtaining competitive financing for affordable housing, and is staffed and led by some of the highest quality people in the business. And by quality, I'm talking about people who have understood how to work collaboratively as partners with municipalities all over New Jersey. I've had experience with RPM in about a dozen other towns in New Jersey, similar to Madison. And I think it's fair to say that the track record they have in creating trust and partnerships is exceptional. So I think this recommendation will serve the town well. There's a lot of work left to be done because the project is still in its concept stage, but this first step will get the process moving, and I think will keep us on track to satisfy the obligations that you've undertaken in the settlement agreement.
Thank you very much, Bob. And Jim, thank you for the legal background on the process we're going through. Susan, for your planning expertise, and Bob Powell. And I also want to thank Beth McManus, Jerry Doherty, and Greg Castano. If you haven't gathered from this presentation, for those that are watching, that we have a top-notch team. So our committee that was committed to doing the right thing for Madison had the right team to advise them through the whole process. So I just want to reiterate this, our volunteers that put in so many hours. Austri, who brings years of experience from zoning board of adjustment to planning to knowing exactly what's right for Madison. Rachel Ehrlich, who is by trade an architect that works with affordable housing. So we, lucky to have you on our council. Carmela Vitale, who's been passionate about affordable housing, has been involved with along with Pat Rowe, the redevelopment of the Green Village Road School property, and all Pat Rowe, not only a strong supporter of affordable housing, but he loves to crunch the numbers. And so he was there to analyze that. And Mark McBride, who recently retired and has probably given us hours of free consulting work that would have really blown the budget if we had to pay him. So thank you for your team for your excellent work and to guide this council and make the right decision. So with that, any questions or comments from our council members, either comments or questions to our professional team? I know it's a lot of information. All right. Being none, we will then move on. This will be resolution 128 on the consent agenda, and we'll release our professionals. And thank you again for joining us tonight to explain the process and enjoy what we've left of your evening.
Thank you, Mayor.
Good night, man. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Take care. And now we'll bring up Brian Veda and Jim to go over our electric utility interconnection agreement.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution in front of council asking for authorization to execute an interconnection agreement with JCP&L. This is the agreement that basically connects us to the grid. We've had a long and excellent history with JCP&L with various agreements. It's time to update it. The mayor and council received a bunch of information. The agreement is not finalized yet. We're asking for the resolution to approve execution of it when the final agreement is done. We're about 99% there. We have a team that includes Brian Vita, as well as utility engineers, as well as attorneys that have been negotiating and working on this. Brian will talk for a few minutes about it. Brian, I'll let you jump in here.
Sure, great, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. So yes, interconnection agreements, they're standard agreements between transmission owners and wholesale interconnected customers such as Madison. Nearly all municipal customers in PJM have interconnection agreements with their transmission owners. For example, all of the municipalities in Pennsylvania and Delaware, they have these interconnection agreements. So it's not something that's new. Now these agreements, they have to be approved by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC. And the process that'll happen is the transmission owner will file it at FERC, and they can file it unsigned. So that's a key distinction to understand. If they file it unilaterally, the only recourse that the boroughs would have is basically to fight it out at FERC or in a court. So they can do that, and some transmission owners have filed these things unilaterally before in the past. So as Jim mentioned, the boroughs hired an engineering firm to do a study on the impacts and what it potentially would cost to comply with the interconnection agreement. And there were two areas that were noted. Primarily under frequency load shedding and then maintaining system power factors. As far as under frequency load shed, that's basically just keeping the system in balance. If there's a disturbance on the system, such as a sudden loss of a generator, the system operators need to correct the frequency in case it's over or under frequency. And what happens is basically they would start shedding load on the system. And this is what happened in the Northeast blackout of 2003, as well as most recently in February in Texas. The system started shedding load as there was disturbances on the grid. Now, the solution to under frequency load shed is basically to install pole mounted sectionalizing devices or under frequency load shed relays in the borough's substation. Now, this could become an issue. But it is a very rare event. As a matter of fact, it has only occurred once that I know of in PJM, and that was in 2003 during the blackout of 2003. Of key concern is this under frequency load shed requirement is not only a JCP&L requirement, but it's also a PJM requirement. And there are significant PJM penalties that could be assessed for being out of compliance. So this is something, this under frequency load shed, these relays are something that probably needs to be addressed with some urgency. But once again, it's a very rare event, but it can happen. The second item of importance that the engineer determined was power factor correction. And as part of the interconnection agreement, all interconnected transmission customers must maintain a power factor between 97 and 99%. Based on the engineer's analysis, it was determined that Madison does have power factors that range below the 97% requirement at various times. The solution to the power factor correction could be obtained by adding capacitor banks, either pole or pad mounted. And as part of the agreement, one of the things we negotiated in agreements that is if any of the boroughs are unable to afford the installation of like equipment such as capacitors or relays, JCPL will install this equipment and collect for it over the course of 40 years with interest, of course.
So, and in layman's terms, the capacitors, as you can imagine, we've got to operate the electric draw in this very narrow band here. And all of a sudden, a significant amount of load in Madison hits and it temporarily drops down. The capacitors store energy and help to dampen that. So that's part of what we need to install. And at the last two council meetings, during the budget hearings, I've been talking about the use of electric utility substation reserve funds to have to do work. And it's important to know we're going to have to do about at least $500,000, we think, of work in the next 18 months to correct these two issues.
Yep. And of key concern, the power factor correction is not a PJM requirement, it's a JCPL requirement. And one of the things we negotiated into this interconnection agreement is there is a 2-year delay. If once an issue is identified, we asked JCPL to give us a 2-hour delay before requiring us to install any equipment, and they had agreed to that. One other thing that the interconnection agreement does make note of is that there could be the potential that the boroughs would be responsible for upgrades to their own systems that are necessitated by JCP&L upgrading its own system, such as preparing for potential increased demand due to proliferation of electric vehicles. So that's something to think about. You know, there are cost causation concepts in this interconnection agreement, but there could be, the boroughs could be responsible for some upgrades. And finally, the interconnection agreement has provisions for an operating committee. And this committee will contain members from both the boroughs and JCPL. The committee is scheduled to meet at least annually, but can meet upon request, and it will discuss all of these items, potential system upgrades, changes or requirements to the systems. And it's also a way to escalate any disputes that the boroughs may have with JCPL.
So it's an important agreement. It's one that helps guarantee that we understand what our responsibilities and rights are, and JCP&L as well. We've had some conflicts in the past, and the lack of a solid agreement made those challenges. Our attorneys support this. Our engineers support this. Brian supports this. I support this. It's just a matter of finalizing it. So we're asking council to pass a resolution that will eventually let us execute this agreement. Are there any, and it's kind of dry stuff, I know, but if there's any questions, let me know.
Any questions or comments from the council? Deb and then Rachel.
Tim, just want to confirm the transformer upgrades that we have to do. I assume we are paying for that and not taking them up on their generous loan of 40 years plus interest.
That is correct. Yes, we'll use the substation repair the substation reserve funds for that. And I'm glad we started putting money away. It's not 100% the intended use, but we'll be able to use those funds, and hopefully the linemen will be able to do some of the work as well.
And then if we're using that money for this, how do we replenish the substation reserve?
Every year we're putting an amount in the electric utility operating budget into the substation reserve. So the bathtub level is here. We're going to drop it down, but then hopefully we'll fill it back up. When we started that reserve, we were concerned about the health of the substations. They've been operating relatively well, so we feel comfortable to do this.
Thank you.
Rachel?
I just want to add that I'm reassured that we are being proactive and seeking to, develop and promulgate an agreement that is in the borough's best interest, given the difficult situation we find ourselves in. I understand that JCP&L can also go ahead and adopt their own agreement, which isn't really much of an agreement if it's only one party. So the fact that we are working to quickly develop and advance this and execute it is in the borough's best interest. And I hope that is the agreement we are eventually able to adopt, and not one that is a unilateral one proposed by JCP&L. So thank you to Jim and Brian and our utility engineering consultants who have contributed to this sort of fast-paced effort to get this going and adopted.
Any other comments or questions? Brian, thank you for your time and thank you for sticking around. And I think this may go down as one of the most educational council meetings we've ever held between our experts in affordable housing and Brian joining us on this agreement. So thank you for your time on this.
Thank you.
And we now move on to ordinances for hearing. Will the, or actually just to confirm that is resolution 129 on the consent agenda. So now we'll move on to ordinances for hearing. Will the clerk please read the statement?
The ordinance is scheduled for hearing were introduced by title and passed on the first reading at the regular meeting of council held on April the 12th, 2021. All were posted and filed according to law, and copies were made available to the general public requesting same.
I call up ordinances for second reading. Ask the clerk to read said ordinance by title. Ordinance 14-2021.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison amending Chapter 190 of the Madison Borough Code entitled Water to update the water connection fee schedule.
I open the hearing to anyone in the public wishing to comment on ordinance 14. Seeing none, I close the hearing.
Mayor, I move ordinance 14-2021.
Second.
Any council discussion? And a reminder, this is an annual ordinance and this fee is paid by developers, not by residents typically. Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 14-2021 adopted and finally passed, and ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance according to the law. Ordinance 15-2021.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison amending Chapter 155 of the Madison Borough Code entitled Sewer to update the sewer connection fee schedule.
I open the hearing to the public for ordinance 15. For anyone wishing to comment, please click on raising your hand. Seeing none, I close the hearing.
Mayor, I move ordinance 15-2021.
Second.
Any council discussion? Again, this is same as the previous ordinance, but with the sewer. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 15-2021 adopted and finally passed, and ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance according to the law. Ordinance 16-2021.
Ordinance the Borough of Madison appropriating $49,000 from the General Capital Improvement Fund for the purchase of replacement benches and related accessories.
I open the
Mayor.
hearing for ordinance 16-2021. Anyone in the public, please raise your hand and we'll bring up Tom Howard and Putis.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Sorry I'm back again, but I just wanted to, Tom Harlan Putis, 27 Pomeroy Road. I wanted to commend this resolution and all the effort made, I guess by this is from the DDC and the Business Development Manager, reviewing the inventory in town of all the benches, which are probably all used widely by the borough residents. And in addition, and it's going to make a nice improvement to way all the areas where we have public seating now look. The benches that are around town are probably very, very old and they look dated. In addition, I'd like to also ask if the borough could consider changing some of the trash cans and recycling cans and even adding more to the downtown. You could see on busy days now that we have a lot of residents around, there's not enough capacity and those seem dated too. So just a comment and observation from myself, but I'm glad that we're moving forward with this resolution and this is a good expenditure for the downtown. Thank you.
Thank you, and good suggestion on the cans. Yep, they're showing their age too. Anyone else in the public wishing to comment? Seeing none, I close the hearing.
Mayor, I move ordinance 16-2021.
Second.
Any council discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Bailey?
Yes.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 16-2021 adopted and finally passed. I ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance according to the law. Ordinance 17-2021.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $95,000 from the General Capital Improvement Fund for HVAC, heating, and boiler repairs and improvements at the Hartley Dodge Memorial.
I open the hearing for ordinance 17. Anyone wishing public, please raise your hand now. Seeing none, I close the hearing.
Mayor, I move ordinance 17-2021.
Second.
Council discussion. Again, this is to help some emergency repairs related to the very old system in our very great building. No other comments? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 17-2021 adopted and finally passed, and ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance accordance to the law. And now we're on to our final invitation for discussion from the public. This is when you may comment on any topic. Again, same rules apply. Click on the hand or *9 if you're on the phone. When you are recognized, state your name and address. Try to keep your comments to 3 minutes or less, but we will give you a 1 minute grace and stop you at 4. And we'll bring up Tom Howard Putters going for the hat trick. Welcome, Tom.
Oh my gosh, this is so funny. Here he comes again. Am I the only one left from the public at the meeting? Everybody else?
No, there are, and actually, thank you for mentioning that. We have 19 at this point. We have 19 members of the public still in attendance. We were, I think, about 42 at a peak earlier.
Yeah, I bored half of them away, unfortunately. Mayor, I want to ask you again about Tom Harlan Putters 27 Pomeroy Road. And I've asked this at a few meetings. If and when you're going to have any scheduled town hall meetings so that the public and you and the council and maybe some of the administrators can just have some discussions as opposed to us just speaking to you and hopefully getting an answer. And if not, the microphone's turned off, and then our opportunity to have a two-way discussion is stopped. So I asked that from you before, Mayor. Hopefully it comes up soon. Next question is, when are we going to return to live council and town meetings at Hartley Dodge Memorial? And maybe you've already been thinking about since the governor just changed some of the COVID standards about going to dances and proms and other indoor events, we probably could manage to have meetings inside the town hall. I'm assuming that if not everybody on council and administrator have been vaccinated, they should probably getting close to that. So hopefully that'll be in the very, very near future. If that's permissible, I don't know if that's something for the state. The other thing is Councilwoman Cohen before commented on a lot of things regarding MACA events. And if that's something that's available on the RoseNet or somewhere, it wasn't something I took notes on, but there was some good opportunities for the community to get involved and to come and see some of what's going on between MACA and the community center. The last thing I wanted to mention, and I might be speaking off base, I thought I read somewhere in a previous meeting, or maybe it was on over in social media or in the news, that the town was considering to do an evaluation of our outdoor sports and recreation fields. Is that correct, Mayor? That we were thinking of doing a study?
Yes, we'll give you some more background on that shortly. Yep.
All right. So the reason I'm commenting on that is that when I was on the Environmental Commission in 2005, the Board of Education, the Borough of Madison, and the Environmental Commission, we contracted an athletic fields evaluation and fields management plan. It was a comprehensive study by an engineering group called T&M Associates. You probably remember it. Anybody who was involved in the town back then, Ashley shaking her head, nodding, and Jim Burnett probably remembers it. I'm sure Ray remembers it. It was not inexpensive. It was expensive and very comprehensive. And I don't think anything around our borough open space and fields have changed very much in the last 15 years. So if we could save some money and refer to this document before we proceed to study the same soils and turf conditions again, it might be a prudent way of saving some money for the borough. I actually have a copy of it in my hands, and I think there's a copy of it saved electronically from one of our meetings when we got the final plans and we all reviewed it together as a group. So that's just I remember hearing or reading somewhere about the borough. Maybe
One minute.
Okay. The other comment I wanted to make, and you did say something about this before with regards to the federal COVID relief funds, which are going to come to the borough. I know you don't know when, and everybody's just estimating how much, but when it does come in, it's going to be some form of tax relief, even if it goes to the general fund, because it can be used for capital projects if it's not for tax relief. And it's going to have a designation of some sort to assist the municipality in doing something that had some kind of COVID effect on running a town. And also some of it's going to go to the schools. So I know that you're going to acknowledge that when it comes in. It's been so many questions about it, but hopefully we can use that in a positive way when that money does come into, because we know that we do need some relief from the state and from the federal government. I think that's it. Thanks very much for your time. Sorry to come and speak to you so many times, but just wanted to give a few points over the course of the evening.
And you made it just at 4. I gave you a little cushion there, but a couple of quick things. Yes, we've talked a couple of times about town hall meeting, and I don't anticipate this happening over the next month, just because personally it's a very, very busy month for me. But I did these years ago or earlier. It seems like many years ago in my mayor life, but they are productive, and we'll get back to that. Borough council meetings in person. We're still not to the point where we can have a typical crowd in the council chambers. So what we're anticipating with the ever increasing inside indoors limits going up, which is good news, but also coming up on the summer season, that we're planning on a September launch of in-person meetings, because that'll allow both residents and our council members to participate in meetings no matter where they are during the vacation season. A website, madisonnjarts.org. Is that it, Deb? So yeah, madisonnjarts.org. We'll get you linked up, and we'll confirm that in case I'm wrong, to all the great things that are happening downtown. We're still working on the proposals related to the Parks Master Plan, but this is far different than the previous one. The previous one was just on active recreation, the fields, and I'll pause for a second and let Deb correct me on the website. And unmute yourself, though.
We reversed ourselves. It's MadisonArtsNJ.com.
Okay. All right. So MadisonArtsNJ.org or
.org.
.org. All right. So if you capture that. So this master plan is for all the parks and the passive parks, the trails, and playgrounds and everything that the public takes on. So the TMI report is still a valid one and was very helpful, and this is not redoing that report. And so a lot to learn as the COVID funds come in, and so we'll stay tuned for that one. And at this point, I do not see any raised hands. Last chance. I close this part of the meeting, and we now move on to introductory ordinances. Will the clerk please read the statement?
The ordinance is scheduled for first reading, have a hearing date set for May the 10th, 2021. All will be published in the Madison Eagle, posted on the bulletin board, and made available to members of the public requesting copies.
I call up ordinances for first reading. Ask the borough clerk to read said ordinance by title, ordinance 18-2021.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison amending Chapter 34 of the Borough Code entitled Police Department, amending procedures for review of the ranking of candidates.
Mayor, I move ordinance 18-2021.
I second the ordinance.
And this is related to the promotional part, which we've touched on earlier. Any other comments or questions from the council? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Ms. Byrne,
Yes.
Mr. Hoover,
Yes.
Ms. Cohen. Is that yes?
Deb?
Yep.
Yes, sorry, I thought.
Ms. Ehrlich,
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan.
Yes.
Ordinance 19-2021.
An ordinance amending regulations pertaining to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund in Article 8, Affordable Housing Development Fees, Section 195-46.
Mayor, I move ordinance 19-2021.
I second it.
Any council discussion? This is one of the steps we need to take working towards our settlement. Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Ms. Byrne,
Yes.
Mr. Hoover,
Yes.
Ms. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich,
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan.
Yes.
And now we move on to consent agenda resolutions. Will the clerk please read the statement?
Consent agenda resolutions will be enacted with a single motion. Any resolution requiring expenditure is supported by a certification of availability of funds. Any resolution requiring discussion will be removed from the consent agenda. All resolutions will be reflected in full in the minutes.
Mayor, I move resolution 118-2021 to resolution 133-2021.
Second.
Any council discussion or any that need to be pulled? Roll call vote, please.
Bailey,
Yes.
Ms. Byrne,
Yes.
Mr. Hoover,
Yes.
Ms. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich,
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan.
Yes.
And before we move to the next one, I see that John Misha is in the public. So John, congratulations. We're looking forward to your leadership of our great department. There is no unfinished business. Approval of vouchers. Will the clerk please read the voucher totals?
For the current fund, $4,199,545.24. For the general capital fund, $3,959.27. The electric operating fund, $1,343,928.47. For the water operating fund, $22,127.81. And the trust, $33,492.45. The total's $5,603,053.24.
Mayor, I move approval of the vouchers.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Bailey,
Yes.
Ms. Byrne,
Yes.
Mr. Hoover,
Yes.
Ms. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich,
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan.
Yes.
Okay, under new business, I would like to announce the following appointment. This is a mayor's appointment to the Madison Housing Authority, not requiring council confirmation. And this is for the unexpired term of Guy Ruckelshaus through August 10th, 2024. And for those that are not aware, Mayor Ruckelshaus is moving out of Madison, so he stepped off the Madison Housing Authority. And certainly, if you see him in town in the near future, please congratulate him and thank him for all the work he has done as a volunteer over the many years in Madison. And the appointment is Caridad Reyes, Community Place. She also serves a role as a Madison Affordable Housing resident, which is required for the board. And with that, Mr. Landrigan.
Mayor, I move that we adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
Good
you
night,
all
y'all.
for a great night, very important and very educational night. Take care. Be well.